Immersed Robot.
Hello everyone, welcome to Immersed Robot. So this is just a quick impromptu video. I was thinking about streaming on my Twitch channel just now, just for 30 minutes or so while I play a bit of Elite Dangerous, but I decided against it. And for anybody who isn't aware, I am on Twitch now, just doing very sort of casual little Elite Dangerous videos, and I'll probably, I'll just do them when I want to do them. They won't be on a regular basis or anything like that. They'll just be when I've got sort of 30 minutes to an hour free to do those. But I do sort of talk about various topics on those, or I plan to at least. But instead of doing that today, I decided just to make a quick video. And the topic for this video, while I play some Elite Dangerous, is my history with VR. And I don't think I've discussed too much of this before. I think I've probably mentioned a few things in the past in various videos, but I just thought it'd be a good idea just to give you all an idea of how I got into VR when I first tried it, and just sort of my path to making this YouTube channel really. And the first experience I had with VR was it was in the early 90s. It was on a virtuality machine, but before that I remember seeing episodes of Tomorrow's World, and anybody that is in the UK will know what Tomorrow's World is, at least of a certain age I would imagine. It was sort of a prime time show on the BBC, which was sort of about future technology and various things like that, and they had various sections on virtual reality in the sort of late 80s, early 90s I think it was. And so I'd seen some stuff about virtual reality then, but then it was actually when I was in town with my parents, and they had some of these virtuality machines, which I have covered on this channel before. Just some I've made a video about some of the virtuality machines on here. But so I was in town with my parents, and that's Leicester, by the way, Leicester in the UK, that's where I live. And I was in one of the shopping centres, and in one of these shops called BT's, there was 2 virtuality pods set up. And I'd seen these and I was enthusiastic about it, and I remember my dad mentioning stuff about virtual reality back then. He's got almost no interest in it now, but he seemed to, at least in my memory, he seemed to have some kind of interest in sort of the early days of it, and I think it's just because he was interested in technology as well. So he actually paid for me to go on one of these sit-down virtuality pods, and it was a flying game, like a flying combat game in modern jets really, and I think this was called VTOL, and this is something I've mentioned in one of my other videos before as well. It's obviously not the modern day VTOL, which is available on Steam now. It was an older version, but I remember that experience vaguely, and there was a lot of polygons involved, and the frame rate wasn't great, but it's actually quite sketchy, my memories of it, but it definitely left an impact on me, and I was I walked away being really impressed with it, but it just didn't. I remember the experience sticking with me, but for whatever reason I was too young. I was like 11 years old when I played that, so I just felt like it was always going to be something that was beyond reach for like home use or something like that, and I didn't really follow virtual reality beyond that. In 95 I got my first PC, and I vaguely remember seeing some adverts in magazines and things like that for the VFX1 and the Cybermax virtual reality headsets, and I've got no experience with those. I don't know if they are I believe they've got to be like very basic virtual reality experiences. I think they had some compatibility with sort of games of the 90s like Doom and Quake, but I don't know. I would love to try one of those actually, like either the VFX1 or the Cybermax, but I don't know, and I don't remember seeing too much coverage about them, just the occasional advert in sort of magazines and things like that really. So apart from that is really sort of my earliest experiences with virtual reality, and I didn't follow it too much until 2012. I saw the Kickstarter for Oculus, and it was around then anyway. I remember seeing the Kickstarter. I remember going on the Oculus website shortly after that time, and there wasn't a lot of details. There weren't too many details on the website about exactly what it was or what they were doing. You know, it was sort of basic. They were a little bit secretive perhaps, but not overly secretive. And of course the DK1 and DK2 came out around there, and part of my interest did stem from that first experience on the virtuality machines. But I didn't jump into the DK1 or the DK2, but I did watch it from a distance, and I stayed, around 2012, 2013. I had a lot of interest in virtual reality then, but I didn't want to get one of the development kits for whatever reason. I don't know why. To this day, I don't know why I didn't. I think around that time, my two children, my second child had just been born, and money's tight and all of these things, and I just didn't jump into the development kits of the Oculus. But I knew I was going to get some kind of virtual reality headset as soon as the consumer versions were released. And of course Oculus released or put their CV1 up for pre-order before the HTC Vive, but it didn't come with motion controllers. It was just the headset and Xbox controller at that time. And around then, so it was 2015, I think, that they sort of said that the release date will be early 2016 for the Oculus Rift. And by that time, HTC had already shown the HTC Vive at various events, and there was a lot of interest about that headset going around the tech industry about that headset. It came with motion controllers, and there was this collaboration with Valve as well, so that caught my attention. But when these two headsets went up for pre-order, I did pre-order the Oculus Rift CV1, and I also pre-ordered the HTC Vive, and this was sort of a little bit really on the limit of my budget. The HTC Vive was absolutely on the limit of my budget of what I could afford at that time, so one or the other was going to have to go. And around that time, room scale, motion controllers, and all of these things were being spoken about more and more, and I wanted to experience virtual reality in the way I believe it should be experienced, which is with room scale and motion controllers. So I ended up cancelling my pre-order for the CV1, and I got a HTC Vive, and I was in the first 10 minutes of the pre-order for the HTC Vive, so I got it. I think actually it was about 2 weeks after the launch I received my HTC Vive, and it was absolutely fantastic. I did try it at a local retail store, PC World, and they had some demos available, and around 2 weeks before I got it, they did have some demos, and I did try Space Pirate Trainer and Tilt Brush and things like that for around 20 minutes. The things I was concerned about were the things that I'd read on the internet about, the field of view and screen door effect, the low resolution of the screens and things like that. But I needn't been too concerned, because when I got it, I was just absolutely blown away. I thought it was fantastic. And then, I played with the HTC Vive for a long time. That was my headset throughout 2016. I'm just trying to think when I got my Rift now. So it was towards the end of 2016, I think I got. They had Summer of Rift at some point, and I think I got my Oculus Rift then, and that might be actually that must have been 2017, Summer of Rift, and I think I got the Oculus Rift then. And then shortly after that, I also got the PlayStation VR. So there's no doubt at this point I was really into virtual reality, and of course by this point I was also on a podcast with Anthony from VR365, Steve and Chris as well, and that podcast was called VR Roundtable. And so there was no doubt that I was really heavily invested in VR around that time. So those were the headsets that stayed with me for a while, the Vive, the Rift and the PlayStation VR. And I really liked all of those headsets in different ways. I was a little bit apprehensive about the Rift when I first got it for the first week or so, until I got used to some of the optics. It was just very different from the Vive in some ways. And again, I've mentioned this on some of my videos before, the binocular overlap, the stereo overlap was different, and I didn't know that at that stage that's why I felt a little bit uncomfortable with the Rift when I first got it, but I think that turns out to be what it was. But actually the Rift gradually became my favourite VR headset around that time, the CV1. It was just very comfortable. I still think it's a great headset. It's still a very comfortable headset. And yeah, I'm really, once you get the 3 sensors as well, eventually I got 3 cameras for the Rift as well. And the tracking was flawless. Room scale tracking was basically on a par with the Vive. Of course, you're using more resources, you're using more USB connections and things like that, but so it had some disadvantages, but at the same time, I didn't really care about that. I had a dedicated space for VR, and I had the Vive set up permanently, and I also had the Rift, and it was simply a matter of turning one on and putting it on my head for whichever one I wanted to use, and increasingly I gravitated more towards the Rift for whatever reason. Don't get me wrong, I still love that Vive. I think it was a fantastic headset. PlayStation VR was a good headset as well, and I had, they had the titles, they had the AAA titles. Skyrim first came out on the PlayStation VR, and that was fantastic, so I spent a long time in that with that headset. And in spite of sort of slightly lower resolution and the tracking issues with the Move controllers and things like that, I still think it was a great budget entry point into VR, and I still do. I think in 2022 it's definitely showing its age, as all of these headsets from 2016 will do, but it's still a competent headset even now to get some great experiences on. So around that time as well, by doing VR Roundtable, somebody contacted me from Whitway Studios, who made the game called People Cubed, and they were sort of regulars in the chat, and they contacted me to say that they had a Pimax 5K, and if I wanted to loan it for a week, borrow it for a week, then I was welcome to do that. So I took them up on that chance, and I borrowed a Pimax 5K because I was intrigued by this. Of course, the Pimax, it's got like a wide field of view, a high resolution than some of the headsets I was using at that time. So I jumped at the chance, and it was a great experience. I'm really glad that I got to try the Pimax around that time. It's got issues. I'm very sensitive to distortion in VR headsets, and it's certainly got levels of distortion, and there's ways to mitigate that, but I couldn't eliminate the distortion. That was really the main downside of that headset for me. Still, it's still a good headset. I don't dislike Pimax necessarily, and if you are able to ignore or not see the distortion issues on certain settings or things like that, then I think it's a competent headset. There's nothing wrong with it at all, and in fact it's probably, if there's no distortion or you're not affected by the distortion, it's probably one of the best headsets you can get in terms of like value and things like that. There's various issues around that, so I don't want to get too deeply into that because there's issues around support and things like that with Pimax. I also tried around that time, I picked up a used Samsung Odyssey, and that was one of the best Windows mixed reality headsets around that time. It got glowing reviews, and I played a lot of this game in that headset as well, Elite Dangerous, and it's a good headset. There was a lot going for it. It had a nice resolution around that time. It also, I believe, if memory serves, I think it also had OLED displays, so it looked great with games like Elite Dangerous. It just didn't, I don't know how to put it, it just didn't click with me for whatever reason, and I didn't keep it for too long. I kept it for around a month, and then I sold it on. It just, it wasn't something I felt drawn towards using above my current VR headsets around that time, so I did decide to move on from that. But I did recognise it as a very good VR headset, and one that was very well suited to certain titles. Let me just think what else. So of course we had the Oculus Go, so I picked up an Oculus Go around that time as well. Then I moved on to the Rift S, of course. The Rift S came out, the Valve Index, which is the headset I still use to this day, the headset I've got on my head right now as I play this fantastic game. And so the Oculus Go, the Oculus Quest as well, the original Oculus Quest, I picked that one up, and then the Quest 2 as well. So those are the headsets I've used primarily. I don't think I've missed any out. I probably have, but those are the headsets that I've used in the past, and now I've got the Valve Index and the Quest 2, and those are the only two that remain. And I've had a few others actually. There's one that I've tried I'm not able to talk about too much. It's nothing, it's one you've heard about, so you're not missing out too much, but I'm for some reason I'm still not able to talk about that headset. It was an earlier prototype that I got sent to try out, so I'm not able to discuss that. But generally at the moment I'm still using the Valve Index and the Quest 2, and these are two fantastic headsets in very different ways. So that's really my history with VR, what's led me up to this point, and I'm sort of ready. I think I'm ready for a new PC VR headset. I don't know which one it will be. I'm sort of interested in the Pimax 12K. Again, if they have eliminated any distortion issues with the Pimax headset, which they claim to have, although they've claimed to remove any distortion issues in the past. This is the thing with the Pimax, it's like they seem to recognise some of the distortion issues that people had originally, and then they'd say, yeah, but the distortion profiles have now been updated and those have all been rectified. If that's true, then why do they make a point of saying with the 12K, the newly announced Pimax headset, that they have now eliminated all distortion issues? Because that should be old news. They have already said that they've eliminated that on their current headsets. So I've not used a Pimax headset for a long time. I don't know if the distortion issues still remain, but based on what they are saying themselves now, it seems that they still do. So the 12K, if they have actually removed any distortion issues on that headset, then that is one that I will be very interested in. It's probably, it's going to be too expensive. I will never justify over, it's $2,000, £2,000, whatever it's going to be. It's way too much for my budget. I think that £1,000 is really the limit of what I will ever go to on a VR headset, and the Valve Index was met that criteria, and I don't think I'll ever go beyond that, simply because I honestly feel like headsets are outdated so quickly with newer technology that's coming out. There is no headset that you can get today that is safe for the next 2 years. We don't know what's going to happen, so there's always options to sell it on and things like that, but I honestly think that £1,000 is just my personal limit. I've got a certain budget that I can set aside to VR, and £1,000 is probably beyond that budget in terms of what would be rational necessarily, but I'd sell on my Index and stuff like that. So I treat it almost sometimes as a rental in some ways, but the Index has served me well. That was the £1,000 headset, more or less, £919. It served me well. I've had it for, it will be sort of 3 years, will it be? Middle of this year, perhaps. I can't remember exactly when it came out, but so it'll probably be around that. And I'm starting to ramble, aren't I? So I'll probably leave it there. I just wanted to give a few details of my history with VR anyway. This is a nice little system anyway, a binary system here. Still making my way to Colonia. That doesn't need to be said anymore, I don't think. I say that in every single video. But anyway, that's pretty much it from me. Thank you very much for joining me during this very rambly, incoherent, casual video while I play a bit of Elite Dangerous. And I'll see you next time.